Sarah.
Morning, Sarah Jane, and hello from Ocean Village here in Southampton. The city voted 54% to leave against 46% for remain. And one of the key issues suggested by Leave voters when they made that vote was immigration. There was a rapid influx of Eastern European migrants to the city of Southampton following EU enlargement. There's a 30,000 strong Polish community here in Southampton, making up 10% of the population, and that led to concerns about the pressures being put on public services. Trade also a huge issue here. Brexit seen as a potential opportunity. Southampton is the UK's second busiest port. 90% of its exports from here go outside of the EU. £75 billion a year of trade coming through Southampton Port, and the International Trade Secretary Liam Fox has said that this city could reap the benefits of free trade deals with countries outside of the EU. That, of course, contingent on the kind of deal, the kind of Brexit that we get. And there are concerns that those trade deals won't do enough to outweigh the damage done to the wider regional economy. Also concerns here in a big university city about the loss of EU funding, the impact that it might have on recruitment in the NHS. 20% of people here working within the health services sector, for example. So let's discuss some of those issues and the factors behind the vote and where we're heading with my panel of guests here this morning. Jenny Paliuka, who's a student here at Southampton University, Alan Bloor, who's a marine consultant, and Don John, a diversity consultant. Thanks very much indeed for being with us this morning. Jenny, let's start with you. Yeah. You were 18 at the time of the referendum vote, so that was the first time you got to have your say democratically. Yeah, how did you vote and why?
I voted to remain because as a student, it just, being in the EU provides a lot more opportunities, studying abroad, things like that. I'm also half Italian, so half of my family lives in Europe. Part of my family are like migrants to this country, they're Italian and they live in the UK, so it was just, for me, the best interests and everything lie in the EU, so I was quite disappointed by the result when it came out.
Alan, your accent will give you away. You're originally from Liverpool, but you lived in Southampton for some 40 years. How did you vote?
I voted to come out. I'd voted, I'm old enough to have voted to go in originally.
You voted to join?
Yeah, but what we voted for wasn't what we've got now. It was just a trading thing, not a political regime that
so
would
you
get
were concerned about ever closer union?
Yeah, I didn't want a close union. We still need our independence, and that's why we voted to come out.
And do you still stand by that vote now?
Oh yeah, definitely. Even more so now. You see the shenanigans in Europe, and you think, we don't want that. But unfortunately, all the politicians have all got a separate agenda to suit themselves, not to suit the country. And of course, I've been a socialist all my life, and to see the stance the Labour Party's having is absolutely ridiculous.
OK, we'll talk a little bit more about Westminster and what's been going on there in a minute. Let's just bring in Don. How did you vote in the referendum?
I voted Remain. And
what were the issues for you?
Well, for me, one of the great things about this country is our connections with the world, and certainly with international trade, with the colonies, with the empire. And this country has benefited substantially from that relationship. And it seems to me, once we disconnect ourselves from Europe, well, it's one step towards disconnecting ourselves from the rest of the world. And we actually have great value in terms of trade, economy, and also people. There are many people from all over the world who've settled here and have made this country rich culturally, economically, and otherwise.
Where do you see this heading? Where would you like Theresa May to go with this?
Well, the trouble at the moment now is we've got a variety of options that don't do us any good. It's a little bit like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic for me. I think we really need a second referendum at the end of the day, because there's nothing wrong with thinking again about the way things are now and have another go at seeing what the country wants.
And what terms would you like the second referendum to be on? Because do you want another Brexit vote, or do you want to vote on the deal itself?
I think we'll another Brexit vote. I mean, I've got this strange, fanciful idea of people over 50 really shouldn't be voting. The future is for the young, and they're the ones who really should have the greatest say in determining what the future is all about.
Alan, what do you say to that?
Well,
Over 50s don't get a say.
I think that's wrong, because we need to give the steadying hand to the younger people, and we've got to use our experience to guide them.
That's not gone very well so far, has it?
No, all these things. It's all these politicians are not giving us a good example. But
Jenny?
Well, I think that...
Let's get the view of it. A younger person.
a young person. So, you know, at the end of the day, young people, we've overwhelmingly voted to remain.
Yes.
And since then, we've been overwhelmingly ignored. And that's not fair. And I completely respect that the older generation should have their say. However, I think that in the conditions of Brexit, we should be looking maybe at what the majority who disagreed want. Because that's, at the end of the day, what democracy is all about, like representing all the voices. And the older generations have had their say. We should technically leave if you listen to the results of the referendum, but you should also listen to the rest of the country and the population of young people who will be looking after the old people in times to come.
How closely have you followed debate in Westminster? Obviously another big day today with a series of amendments being voted on. How engaged have you felt with the political process?
I think I study politics, so I have to be, to somewhat extent, engaged, and it is hard trying to follow it. Even as someone who understands a lot of what the terminology means, I still have to think about it and read so many different articles, and there's so much on Brexit. It is hard to follow.
Alan, what about you? Have you felt connected with what's happening in Parliament?
They're just all doing their own agenda. I don't think they're interested in what's best for the country. Their Corbyn won't even talk. I think May's making a good thing of a bad job. But the rest of them, they're just out for their own ends.
So you don't feel that MPs are acting in the national interest?
No, the rest acting for their own good, not for the good of the country.
Don?
I think we're completely disconnected with the whole parliamentary process. There's some big issues here. Issues around the hospital, the National Health Service. Issues around austerity. The homeless people sleeping on the streets only a block away from where we're standing here now.
And do you feel that Brexit has got in the way of those
Brexit's completely got in the way and given the government an excuse, I think, not to deal with these issues. So in a sense, the whole thing has really been a complete disaster.
So you want to see a second referendum.
Absolutely.
What about you, Alan? Where do you want this to head?
Well, we've had a people's vote. Why do you want another people's vote?
Well, the people have changed. The information has changed. The information we were given originally is not the same anymore. What about all these millions that were going into the National Health Service that's kind of falling apart? What's happened to that? And also the issue of immigration. People are completely forgetting that was a major issue when they actually decided to leave Europe, with issues around refugees and asylum seekers. People were incensed about that and people taking their jobs. And we've forgotten that that was a major issue at the time originally. And I think there's a little bit of a kind of like inconvenience to raise these issues now for many people.
Alan, you'd like to see a no deal. Just very quickly, Jenny, we're out of time. What would you like to see happen now?
I think a second referendum, but on the conditions of Brexit. At the end of the day, it'd be embarrassing to try and go back now.
So we've voted to leave, but you wanted on the terms of the deal.
The terms of the deal.
OK, Jenny, Alan, Don, thank you very much indeed for your views. Lively debate here in Southampton, and we will be continuing to get the views of people here throughout the morning here on Sky News. Neil.
Sarah, thanks very much.